Hello, welcome to this new video. We're gonna look at actions in SolidStart. We're gonna look at how we can revalidate queries through actions and how we can leverage single-flight mutations. So let's jump right in. Let's have a look at the code. I've prepared this little app, and we have at the start here we have a query where we fetch data of a user, and we use the query helper of SolidRouter, which uses a client-side cache. It's a short-lived cache to dedupe requests, and we need that for single-flight mutations. And to the query, you first pass your async function, and then also you pass a key, and that's very important later on. Then here we have our action, which mutates the user, where we just pass form data, and then update the user in the database. And then I have another query just to show you what happens if we do not return anything. For the start, we don't return anything in the action. So we'll see what happens with another completely unrelated query. I just use time to show that data might change and that it updates. This could be any query in your app that's not related to what you actually are mutating through the action. And here we have our component where we fetch the data with the create async primitive. And then we have two helpers that we're going to look at that help with actions. One being useAction, which takes the action as the argument, and then will return just a normal function, which also accepts the same parameter as the action itself and returns a promise. And then we have the useSubmission hook, where we also pass the function, which gives us access to the actions state. So for example, if errors occur, they will be passed into the submit. We have a pending state when we submit a form, so the action is running, then we have a pending state. We can use that to give user feedback. We also have the inputs, which gives us direct access to the data that has submitted to the form. With this, we can, for example, make optimistic updates. And also, if our action returns something, that will be placed in results. So if we return a message, a string or something, we can call that and show feedback to the user. All right, so gonna remove that. So here we have a form, and we have two possibilities or two ways how we can use actions. First one being, we use the good old action prop on the form. We just pass our action to it, and then we also have to define method post. Actions only work with post requests at the moment. So this is one way, and what happens if we submit a form is that the form data is submitted to the server where the action runs, and that's why we also have to type the argument as form data, because the default HTML behavior if you submit a form is that the post body contains the form data. Another way, so if we do it this way with the action, then we cannot do anything client side. So another way to use is the useAction hook, and then this would work like this. Then we have our classical onSubmit event handler. We prevent default, prevent desubmission. Then we get our data from the current target, from our form. Then we could do some client-side validation. So before we send data to the server, we validate on the client and give users a feedback. Hey, you got it's the wrong phone number, or this is not an email address. Text is too short, and so on. Where you use any validation library or your custom validation, whatever you want to do, and then you just call this mutate function that we receive from this action hook, and then pass the form data in here as well. So this is the other method. Of course, if you always only want to use this, in this way you could also change the type that you pass into an object, for example, instead of form data, and then you can properly type it, right? Because form data is not a generic, so we don't have any type completion, so I have to assign the type here this way. Of course, if we use validation library like sort, then we could just pass in the form data, and then after that it would also be typed, and our update function would also not complain. Okay, so this is the setup. Let's have a look what happens if we change something. So go to the form, I type solid, I submit, and then we see, okay, the data is updated, but not just the user data has updated, but also our unrelated query has been revalidated and updated. So the time did change. And if we look at the network tab, we have 3 requests. The first one is the post, of course. This is the form data that is submitted. So if we click on that and look at the payload, this is the data that we submitted. Then here we have the update of the time. So this is our new time. You see here is the data. And here we have our new user function. So what happened now by default is we send data to the server, and then we revalidated all our queries, and our client refetches all those queries. So we're far away from single-flight mutations. So we not only revalidated the user query, but also the time. So let's first fix that. And we can do that by using one of the response helpers that the Solid router provides, being reload, JSON, or redirect. And all of them have in common that they have this revalidate prop that accepts either a string or a string array, and we have to pass in this key of the query. That's why we have to use this query wrapper around our functions and pass it in here. Or the even better way, instead of, I could also type get user. But of course, better is we take this variable, this constant, and type dot key, which then will give us the key that we have put in here, which makes our app much more robust. If we change that later on, it doesn't blow up. And yeah, I definitely recommend to do it this way. So if we would have a query that accepts parameters, let's say let's get user by ID, for example. And then we type ID string. And we would also add this in here. Get user by ID. Then there's also the key for prop, which we can then pass the ID, and it needs to be the same type, right? So we have the ID here, we pass the ID in. So if we if our query accepts a parameter, we can pass that in here. So okay, now let's see what happens now. Now we've made this connection between the action and the query with the key for the query. So if we now change something here, so I'm gonna delete all of these and click submit. Now we only have 2 requests. Okay, that's better. Time hasn't changed, right? I changed this back. You look at the time. Time stays the same. So that's good. We only revalidate related queries. So you see the post request. This is the new data. Again, payload. And here we see at the response, this is the new data that we fetch from the server. But we still do not have single-flight mutations. Okay, so how can we leverage single-flight mutations? In order to do that, we now have to tell the application, or especially the server, which data we need for the next page we are on when the action is finished. So, and we can do that in Solid with preload. So if you use file routing, you do it this way. You export a const route. It has to be this name. And then pass in preload, which is a property where you can pass the queries that you want to fetch. And it's important that these are queries wrapped inside this query helper, because then this data will be put in this client-side cache, this short-lived cache, and the app can then access the data right away. So now we've put that in here, and let's have a look what happens now. I'll delete all the requests here. Say again, svelte, perfect. Submit. Oh, and now we only get 1 request. And if we look at the response, all the data is already in here, and it's not for the new page, and only the data that we actually need. Time still hasn't changed because we only passed the revalidate key for get user. So the response of the action now includes already the new data that we need. So now we have single-flight mutations and we only need one trip to the server. So let's have a look again at the other response helpers that we have. So reload means we stay on the same page and we don't need to return anything, any message or anything to the client. So there's also this JSON helper, which means we also want to stay on the same page, but we can return a message first and then also pass this revalidate key. So this would work the same. If I go in here, do this, remove all of that. Okay, perfect, right? I didn't change anything, but we still have one request and it has the data in here. So perfect, that works as well. And we have here our message, updated skill, which will now be passed to our useSubmission hook or to the const that the return value is assigned to. So, and we have another helper, which is of course redirect. So we redirect to a new page. In this case, I also have an about page, and to leverage single-flight mutations, this new page also needs to have the preload data in here. And the cool thing is, once the template is loaded for this page, it will also not fetch anything for the new page. So our response of the form will already contain the data. I don't think I have that done yet. So if I save now, so redirect makes sense, for example, if you have a login form, right? And after login, you redirect to the home page or to the user's profile or whatever, then this is the helper that you need. All right, now let's submit. And you see that this is our form submission. And on the new page, now it fetched, of course, the template, the TSX, and also some kind of a source map for the new page. If I go back again, now that the template is loaded, and I would do something like this and submit, then it will only be the post request to the server, which contains already the data for the new page. So very cool. You can speed up your applications by kind of 100% because we don't have to make those 2 trips to the server, but only 1. So I hope you liked that video and enjoyed it. And you learned how we can leverage single-flight mutations. I'm going to put it in a nutshell again. We need to use queries to fetch data so that we have keys. And with those keys, we can make connections between actions and queries by providing those keys to the revalidate prop of one of the response helpers. And this way, the application knows which queries are not valid anymore after the mutation. And the second thing would be have preload for the page that you are redirecting the user to, or the next page the user will visit, so that the server knows which data it has to pass to the client. All right, if you liked it, please subscribe to the channel and like the video. And you can also leave a comment for topics you want me to cover next. And see you next time.